Aloha, everybody. It's nice to be there, sort of. I'm here in Hawaii, and I can't see you. I did want to leave my video on just for a moment so that you could see me and I could do my introduction, but I am going to cut it off so that there's not such a delay in our presentation or a lag. I don't mind turning myself back on for questions, so I will see you or you'll see me in a little bit. Let me go ahead and get rid of that and maximize my screen for you. Today I'm going to present for you on making grassroots efforts work, how we can use behavior analysis or the science of behavior change to improve participation and positive outcomes in public policy or legislative change. My name is Dr. Amanda Kelly, as Haley mentioned, and I am the current legislative chair for the Hawaii Association for Behavior Analysis. Our mission is to educate, advocate for, and support both our providers and consumers of applied behavior analysis. Thus, we have worked diligently on our legislative and policy issues, including autism insurance, behavior analyst licensure, and even sustainability initiatives, particularly this year, and we aim to educate local policymakers about the effective applications of behavior analysis and behavior change. As Haley mentioned, I am all of these things here, which keep me quite busy, but it also keeps me immersed in the field. It keeps me connected to consumers, to clients, to advocates, to providers, parents, and allows me to identify room for change where it's needed. And also, it's really incredible to be able to look back and see the progress that's been achieved. There are so many different places where behavior analysis can be applied, and I think often we are first drawn in with an autism or other similarly related attraction, but as we're seeing, as we get the education and the relationships going, these conversations are expanding, and it's really nice to be a part of those conversations. Hawaii is the 50th state in the United States, and there's some debate here locally about whether or not the sovereignty and the nation of Hawaii and the people of Hawaii are actually a part of the United States. Add in some of the current discussion with our administration on a federal level, and that can create a very different and tense culture in the state capital, which could happen anywhere. But it adds an additional layer. We had tried in Hawaii unsuccessfully for many years to pass autism insurance reform. I understand that that's not new to many other states, and Hawaii was pretty late to the game. In the front there in this photo is myself, but I'm also pictured with Kristen Koba-Burt, who is an excellent advocate with me here in Hawaii and with the Hawaii the Hawaii Association for Behavior Analysis. As mentioned in the description for this presentation today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our journey, talk about case examples, and tie behavioral principles such as response effort and pairing and negative reinforcement, ratio strain, into our discussions about how we as everyday teachers, parents, providers, consumers, clients, self-advocates, how we can use what we learn about behavior change to continue to improve our lives and our community. So in 2014, we came really, really close to passing autism insurance reform. I moved to the state in 2013 on the heels of having passed autism insurance and licensure in Massachusetts. And the role that I played there was much smaller than the sort of role I've been cast to play here in Hawaii. So we came very close, and pictured in this image is Senator Josh Green and Senator Roz Baker. They are two of our champions, and they advocated, but in the last 2 minutes of a two-year session, our bill passed technically, but only with the provision to allot $50,000 to study whether or not applied behavior analysis is an effective intervention for individuals with autism. At the time, there were already over 40 states, or there were 40 states that had this legislation. So it was so frustrating to see so many people work so tightly together and to be defeated. After a while, the group that you have could start to dwindle. So I'm going to keep this positive. I'm going to let you know how we ended up making progress and how you can take what we learned and hopefully have it help you, even if it's just in your personal life, for advocating for yourself or for change or just thinking of another way to talk about or conceptualize the science of behavior analysis. In the words of B.F. Skinner, a failure is not always a mistake. It may simply be the best one can do under the circumstances. The real mistake is to stop trying. In 2014, we were crushed. The advocates, Kristen, Lori Unum, and myself, a handful of others, we scattered. We thought we would be embracing. We thought we would be celebrating. Our legislators who had fought for us had run out of energy, had told us there was no more strategies, there was no other angle they thought they could take, and everybody had seemed wilted at the end of that day, beyond wilted, but smothered, I suppose, deflated, exhausted, not reinforced our behavior. And I went home that night, and after, one margarita or maybe two, I sent an email to each one of the legislators who had been a champion or an ally for us. And it was Senator Green and Senator Baker and Representative Della Bellotti. And I put this quote in, and it's all I could do was to use Skinner's words because I hardly had any words left of my own. And the best thing that I got was a response from Senator Green. And he said, "Give us tonight to mourn the loss of this bill, and then we'll come right back at it with you. Like, we'll do it." So in 2015, we had the commitment of Senator Green, of Senator Baker, Representative Bellotti. You know what? We're going to do this again. We've been defeated for 10 years. Amanda, you're a powerful force. Haba came out with some real brain muscle here. And it's interesting to note that the Hawaii Association for Behavior Analysis at this time was about in its 10th year, but had really been created by behavior analysts who were living in a state that is made up of islands. So we are 5 main islands, but 8 islands in total for the main Hawaiian island chain. We have different regions or counties, but we have one school district, one superintendent. We have a legislature that meets, and it's a 2-year session. You have bills go through the Senate, and then they cross over to the House. Then they go through the House, and they can cross over to the Senate. And then we have this interesting thing called Conference Week, where they kind of close the doors and nobody gets to speak. No public testimony can be heard, and they can write and change whatever they want. And it sort of feels like there's not a lot of democracy going on. But in this picture are some really key people. In the top left-hand corner, that is Kathleen Penland. Kathleen, I believe, was in the role of marketing chair in 2015. She is now our president in 2018, and she is rocking that role. To her right, we have Ann Lau, who was legislative chair that year, co-chair with Sarah Sato, who's in front. On our left, between myself and Sarah, is Laura Bollinger. Laura is a board-certified behavior analyst who is now pursuing a law degree so that she can come back and we can use her legal expertise with, again, the science of behavior analysis blended. The woman on the right, top right in pink, actually is a friend of mine from Massachusetts who was tired of the winter and asked if there was anything she could do, what was going on in Hawaii, and was my couch available. And if you are going to come here and help, then yes, my couch is always available. And she came out for 2 months, 2.5 months, and became basically a volunteer lobbyist for us as a behavior analyst, and then Kristen in the front. So we went back at it in 2015, and we were successful. And here we are with Autism Speaks, acknowledging our legislators and being acknowledged, and you can see us mostly in that sea of blue. And this wasn't staged, the pink there with Senator Baker, but it sort of represents our numbers of, 4 boys to 1 girl are diagnosed with autism. Those are our current rates. We were honored to receive an award by Autism Speaks, and we baked blue cookies and bought blue wardrobes. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the fun with the policy change that can be achieved with behavior analysis. Never doubt, in the words of Margaret Mead, that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead, as I mentioned. Successes continue. We saw telehealth passed. As Haley mentioned in the introduction, the ABLE Act, which allowed for adult funding for individuals who are not going to be going to college, a tax-free savings for their families. But you know, the struggles are continuing for us too. So I want to talk to you today a little bit about the process for us in creating our licensure law, what has happened, the changes and the decisions that we made locally, how those decisions were impacted by local culture, and maybe some food for thought for other state chapters and people in other locations when you're going to be having these discussions. Now, I know we're in different places as far as how far you are into implementation, how many behavior analysts are in your state. Currently in Hawaii, we have 222 licensed behavior analysts. When I moved here, there were 73. So it's incredible. It is a shaping process, but what I want to do today is to share with you the strategies to make sure you're successful the first time. And if not the first time, maybe the best ways to make sure you're successful every time. When we see states enact, autism insurance, sometimes we saw age and dollar caps, especially early on. And then we would see those age or dollar caps repealed or removed. What was often said to us by Lori Unum was get something on the books. And she's the Vice President of Governmental Affairs for Autism Speaks. We also consulted heavily with Drs. Gina Green and Jim Carr. Dr. Gina Green is with the Association for the Profession of Behavior Analysts, and Dr. Jim Carr, of course, is with the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. In Hawaii, we made the decision when we passed autism insurance to also have a licensure law. That licensure law was asked for by our insurers, but again, it's just important that we control language. And so that's where we're finding ourselves back at the Capitol now. In order to be successful, you must identify your priorities. Do you want to talk about school safety related to guns? Do you want to talk about drownings for children in your neighborhood and making sure that there are perimeters around pools? Do you want to talk about sustainable behavior change and reducing single-use plastic in your state and making legislation to enact change that way? Or are you looking to remove an age or dollar cap or to expand language that you have? Or is there another profession perhaps that is seeking to establish themselves as a separate licensed profession, but now they have some question or concern about the overlap? This year, in 2018, we currently have 6 bills that were introduced related to behavior analysis. None of them were introduced or sponsored by any behavior analyst or anybody in the Hawaii Association for Behavior Analysis. We had the Department of Health, the Department of Education, and we have psychologists and social workers who have an interest in making some changes to our existing law. And so some of the things that applied in 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17 still apply now in 2018. And I imagine they will apply to you where you are here in Hawaii. And many of them are relevant from what I learned to do from my experiences in Massachusetts. But there will also be some differences, I'm sure. And I hope that with that, I'm just sharing with you a story you find of interest. The most important thing I can recommend is that you identify a priority that's something that you love, something you're incredibly passionate about and you have an unwavering dedication to. Anything other than that, and it's not worth it. The process is exhausting, it's grueling, but it can be formative with the change that it achieves. One of the first steps you have to determine is if you want a bill, if there's a language that you'd like introduced. Perhaps you passed insurance reform, but you're having difficulty for children accessing their medical service during the day. Or perhaps there was a new law passed on seclusion and restraint, and you want to weigh in on preventative measures that should be in place or team members that should be a part of those decision-making process. So if there is a bill that you want introduced, you're going to have to ask somebody for a favor. We find the best thing to do is ask anybody, but particularly find somebody who is a constituent of the legislator that you're going to ask. Once you have a bill, they'll sponsor very many of them because most of them die, especially in our conference week. But once you have a bill, you have to decide if you support or oppose it. If somebody else has introduced a bill, you have to decide if you support or oppose it. In Hawaii, you have, I believe, it's 48 hours notice if there's going to be a hearing. You must have your testimony in 24 hours ahead of time, which gives you 24 hours to take action and activate a community and decide if you support or oppose what looks like it's written in Japanese. And I don't know how to read Japanese. And what's interesting is if you have a bill that you support, or if you have a bill that you oppose, your opinion on that very same bill could change at the very next hearing on the same bill. For example, in Hawaii right now, we are discussing applied behavior analysis in the schools. In Senate Bill 2925, currently being debated, our Department of Education introduced language that said children should only receive behavior analysis services after they have been hurt, hospitalized, or everything else has failed. After a multi-tiered approach from a multidisciplinary team has exhausted everything that they know how to do, or if a significant injury has occurred, then and only then should we consider contracting with people who are licensed to practice behavior analysis, which could also potentially include behavior analysts. So you see, we were obviously in strong opposition of anything that would suggest that for our students. However, on Wednesday, we had a hearing, and our senators removed all of the language introduced by the Department of Education, and I'm incredibly proud to say that they accepted all of the language as amended, suggested by HABA, and now we are in full support of a bill that 2 days ago we were in strong opposition against. So it's hard to stay on top of it, and it's hard to communicate, but something as a recipient or part of the community, a member that you are, it's important to know that if somebody says oppose and the next day they say support, ask your questions, but the best thing to do is to align and identify agencies, entities, or groups that you trust. In order to do that, you're going to have to form a team. No one person can achieve all of this. And believe me, I've tried. I've done social media campaigns and downloaded applications and taken photos and videos and dubbed over things and made memes. And I've also fallen asleep with my computer wide open. And when people say, how can we help? You have to be willing to give them a task. And if you're like me and you want to make sure the testimony gets in, so you're going to submit it, then ask other people if they can remind you to shut your computer and take a break. Get up and walk outside. I live in Hawaii, literally almost on the beach, and I haven't seen it in probably a month. That's something that is a problem when you are trying as an entity or a state chapter or an individual to advocate for change. When things become really large, you're going to be probably looking at lobbying or fundraising for some legislative support. Regardless, it's a team. For us, we had a team that was led by our HABA board member, which is our legislative chair. Currently, I'm in that role. It's open to everybody. We do ask that you're a HABA member, and our membership is $25 or some minimal nominal fee. I believe it's even less for students or family members. But we also have events, fundraisers, activities, and we want our community to be involved. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about just how powerful that's been. We have formed advocacy groups with like-minded individuals, and I can tell you, again, our allies in 2015, many of them are still our allies now, but not all of them, because interests have changed or the climate has changed. And again, that's where that local aspect or community comes into play. For us, though, we also have found that people who, or entities who, were in strong opposition, for example, our insurance agencies lobbied hard against having autism insurance reform pass initially. Now they are at the table saying we are willing to cover some of these services during the day so that we can minimize the long time treatment that's needed. And we're seeing more projections into the bigger picture and looking at the future cost of treatment and the benefits to treating early. So maintain an open mind and realize that you may have identified allies in people or places where you least expected it. A piece of advice is that you should verify if you're part of a nonprofit that the type of nonprofit that you are allows for political involvement. There are some that allow for you to engage in those activities, but there are also some that then, put some barriers or limitations on whether or not you can fundraise or have it be tax deductible. And if you are needing to make a choice, you want to make sure you make one that allows you to do what it is your state needs from you or your group that you're working with needs from you. So we just want to give you some information on that. Get everyone you can on board. Get teachers and lawyers and doctors and parents and self-advocates. And what we found in Hawaii was not everybody in the community, the disability community, wants to talk about behavior analysis. Not everybody has a positive view of it. Some people aren't sure what it stands for. American Bar Association, ABA, American Basketball Association. But when you start talking in common language, like this is for our children, we can help our teachers, let's get support for our parents, people get that. And that becomes really compelling. And for us in Hawaii, with the attitude of aloha and community and caring for your ohana, your family, it really weighs heavily on our legislators' hearts to see the community and the constituents, also the votes, saying what they're experiencing. So get everyone you can on board, everyone you can. So what's valued locally? Think about where you are now. We helped in Ohio with some campaigns, and we looked at their state bird. And I believe it's a cardinal, if I'm recalling correctly. I hope I'm not misspeaking. But the bird, we did air for Ohio, right? That's easy, that's short. And a bird flies around, but it stood for Autism Insurance Reform, right? Autism Insurance Reform. We look at Buckeyes when we were looking at images and memes and things to make. So think about your community, what's important. What mascots essentially could you use for campaigns, and how have other people used them, and how are you going to stand out differently? One thing I talked about earlier was identifying a priority, but I guess I should say, develop what your mission or your message is. In 2015, we wanted autism insurance reform, and we felt if licensure was needed, we wanted to control or be a part of controlling that language. Now in 2018, we have a very broken Department of Education system. I mean, it was probably that way in 2015, but things have become more exposed. We have new change in leadership. Our culture and our community is changing. But what we mean by that also is think about how people communicate. Are you guys sort of a word of mouth kind of town? Do you guys, here in Hawaii, we say you talk story, or it's the coconut wireless, meaning, like you're playing the old telephone game. Where I live, I don't get radio stations, and the first one that I get plays everything in the 90s, like Color Me Bad and Shanice, which is cool. It's a flashback to, my childhood, but at the same time, it's interesting because I didn't think about Hawaii Public Radio as something that the majority of residents in the state are listening to, because we live in remote places. We don't have satellite radio. We don't have satellites over our state to produce those connections. And so public radio has a really far reach here. And I have been on Hawaii Public Radio as recently as this week, I guess. It was Monday. I was going to say last week, but we are in the middle of our legislative session. Evening news, we don't have billboards. Billboards are illegal in Hawaii. So you're not going to raise money, get a billboard. You might take an ad out in a newspaper, but you can sign wave. Whereas in another place, in the middle of New York City, there's so many signs, your sign wouldn't stand out. What are those cultural expectations and norms? What are the current funding issues and budget restrictions for your state? What's going on with your government officials, your senators, your representatives, and who are your opposition? Right now in Hawaii, our governor is under fire, almost literally, for the fake missile, not a missile crisis. And that is something that people are constantly talking about. We also have a death or dying with dignity bill where it would allow somebody to be euthanized. But the question is, if they have a terminal condition, the question is whether or not somebody who has guardianship or ownership rights should have the right to do that. So knowing that those are discussions, the billions of dollars we're bleeding on our rail system, we're not going to go to our state legislature right now and ask them for millions and millions of dollars. Or we're not likely to get it in a time when this is what's happening. So that's what I mean. That's what we're talking about as some examples. In order to advocate for public policy, you must plan, assess, pair yourself, produce written testimony. In Hawaii, we have in-person testimony, and then you keep doing it over and over and over and over and over again. And if you sort of follow this circle or this cycle around and imagine that you are, stirring a pot or a cauldron, and then you went as fast as you could, that's how I feel my brain is right now in the middle of the legislative session. So it's also important that you take some breaks, write things down, think about behavior already, right? Behavior is complex, but we simplify it in our ABC analysis to make sense of its interaction with the world. Same thing here. It's a lot of clicking and links and following and digging and connecting the dots, but making sure that you give yourself time to breathe and understand. So some of the best things we can do is to watch what other people are modeling and to try to imitate that behavior. We want to try to get ourselves to fluency. We can use their documentation. Autism Speaks has so many different resources now. Behavior Babe. I'm also Behavior Babe. If you guys go to my website, www.behaviorbabe.com, I have an ABA advocacy page where you can see videos, click on a free webinar, see what sample testimony looks like. Because I'll tell you, if I hadn't had any experience and lots of hand-holding in Massachusetts, I don't know where we would have been or that we would be where we're at now as quickly as we got here in Hawaii. Connect the community. We couldn't get everyone to agree that ABA is the way to go because everyone's entitled to their opinion and they have their history and experiences. What we could get people to agree to was that if ABA is the treatment you choose, you should have a right to have it funded and available. So there were sort of ifs and commas, but we found common ground. The families, the advocacy organizations, we have the Hawaii Autism Foundation, the Autism Society of Hawaii. We have the Hawaii Autism Ohana, Hawaii Kids Can. We have the Hawaii Association for Behavior Analysis, the Hawaii Association for Psychologists. But what we didn't have, we have the Hawaii Disability Rights Center, is everybody standing together and finding the pieces they agreed on. And I challenge you as teachers, educators, family members, community members, behavior analysts, to use what you know about interactions with other people to your benefit. Also, let's keep up with the times and think about social media. Because of digital access, I'm here with you today, like thousands of miles away. And although I do hope to come see your conference and to be there in the future, and I know you're going to have many more, I'm grateful to be here at your second annual event. It's incredible that we can be connected right now and that I can be a part of this without getting on an airplane. So we used Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you're not a pro in those things, you almost don't have to be. And because I have become pretty proficient in that, I created task analysis and visuals, and I'm happy to share them if you email me specifically because I haven't posted them. An email where you can reach me is behaviorbabe@yahoo.com, and my contact's at the end. But what we did is we linked a lot of these accounts, we produced the visuals, made the task analysis. Instagram is great for photos, Facebook is great for connecting and sharing, and Twitter is almost like you're publishing your little newsletter every day. So I don't see as much, shares and reach tweets and things like that. My percentage of followers are much, much smaller. But we created the Hawaii Association for Behavior Analysis Facebook page. And at first, this was a group and a closed group. And that's great to facilitate discussions with your members, to talk about member benefits that are exclusive to your members. But when you want the community involved and you want a megaphone, make a public page. Get out there. Make it easy for people to find. Our name, or our the way to find us and search us is our handle is at Hawaii ABA. Makes sense. Hawaii Applied Behavior Analysis, and we got it before the basketball or the bar association. We used different techniques that I'll talk to you a little bit about. But in order to use social media tools, some things to think about was that there are legislators who are on Facebook and Twitter. And I'm sure now that we are all very much aware that we have our government officials and elected officials on Twitter. But it can be a really effective way to see what's going on. In the wake of the missile crisis here in Hawaii, it was Tulsi Gabbard who was able to use Twitter to communicate officially that it was not actually a missile aimed at us and that there had been some mistake. So it can be positive, and it can also have its negative downfalls. I have published an article with some co-authors on being savvy with social media, and it's called Blurred Lines, and I'm happy also to get you a link to that. You can find that on ResearchGate as well. Talks about the benefits and the barriers and where we need to dance lightly. Keep your page active and engaging. So we now can schedule posts on Facebook, so you don't have to log in every day. You could schedule them out. We showcase the positive. There's a lot of negative that happens. So-and-so said something about you. This person's, wrote a nasty letter. That parent is really upset. And emotion is appropriate. And passion is absolutely needed. And sometimes it's okay to show your frustration. But in general, people pay attention and follow along when your page makes them feel good. Present facts, but you got to do it in like 140 characters or less. Now on Twitter, you can upload a video and get away with a link, or you can use a link of a video that you posted on Facebook. It's getting a little bit easier to get a little bit more verbose, but I love the idea of simplifying. Think about the 7 defining dimensions or characteristics of behavior analysis. Get a cab. Generality, effective, technological, applied, conceptually systematic, analytic, and behavioral. And think about what that means. When we're saying that we want to present facts and we want to do it really quickly, we're being parsimonious, we're being precise, we want to be compelling as well. Some apps that we recommend, or that I recommend, is InstaQuote. I'm using less and less of that because I've really jumped onto Canva. Canva allows me to put these words on top of the Blue Man Group, who are holding the numbers 41 for some reason, or they were holding the 4, or maybe I put the 1, I don't remember. And then we added in our words and said, 41 states already do, make Hawaii 42. So make sure it rhymes and it's catchy and it's easy for people to remember. Many of our community, of our allies, of our friends, of our colleagues on the mainland, which is what we call the rest of the United States, participated in our social media campaign. We used hashtags, and we also were able to have images and pictures, and I'm going to show you that on the next slide. Within our legislative group, our legislative committee right now is currently comprised of 10 volunteer individuals. We communicate privately in a secret group. Please remember, anything you put on the internet is probably technically not a secret or private. But we are able to communicate quickly with one another. Essentially, it's replacing group text. Our effective social media hashtag campaign was Malama our Keiki. Malama stands for, or means care, and Keiki stands for children. To Malama our Keiki means to take care of our children, to take care of our most vulnerable children. So we used images. We asked people to take photos. We talked about this. We had t-shirts. We painted. We used chalk. We used, in Hawaii, it's graffiti. So you're not really supposed to, spray paint things. That would be illegal. But in Hawaii, what's known as Hawaii graffiti is where you take white coral and you put it on the black volcanic rock, which there's not much of here on Oahu. but the small picture up top with the blue border was on Maui, and Kristen and I spelled out "got autism" and then used that, and that went pretty far. One of the images that we had is a blue background that was painted in yellow paint, Malama or Keiki, actually by a client. You can involve the clients, the consumers, the children. Everybody can be a part of advocating, and it's incredibly powerful and motivating when they do. When we were advocating for autism insurance, a lot of people came forward and stood up. Now that we are being challenged by our administrators in the Department of Education, teachers are afraid to speak up. Parents are afraid for facing retaliation. And we do have a culture, unfortunately, of that here in Hawaii with our school systems, or with even just some of our state departments that are, hopefully that's changing. We do feel a lot of change here. So it's different tones, right? We had a lot of people coming forward and sign waving and holding up banners, and now that is we have a different strategy. Now we have a different strategy. It doesn't mean we don't have allies. Now we are working on a new hashtag social media campaign, and this is for our keiki, which obviously means for our children. And this is because the Department of Education had introduced that bill that I mentioned to you. And when I say the Department of Education, I would just like to clarify. In our state, we have a teacher shortage. And our department administrators, the superintendent, assistant superintendent, like a special education director, that's who we're referring to. Our teachers and our Hawaii State Teachers Association is an ally of the Hawaii Association for Behavior Analysis, and we communicate with them regularly. Many of us as behavior analysts either are or have been educators ourselves, and we have great compassion for the need for teachers to be supported in addition to our children. So in Hawaii, the word for teacher or to be taught or to receive knowledge is kumu. Kumu Mele would be what you might call your teacher if her name was instead of Miss Mele. So in Hawaii, when we're talking about our Department of Education, it's for our keiki and for our kumu, or for our teachers. We also created YouTube videos and animated dry erase board videos and chalkboard videos and Go Animate videos. And there's a lot that can be done now with just QuickTime, or you know what, your smartphone. I do a lot with videotaping quickly on my phone while I'm outside. There's now Facebook Live, where basically anybody can be a news reporter and reach as many people as they can in that platform. On that platform, it's incredible to think about the way that we can communicate with one another now. And videos are compelling, and they're easy for people to understand, or easier for people to understand. So we also needed to simplify the process to decrease our effort for others. We created petitions, we made postcards, we walked around to surf championships and competitions and said, do you believe that children need support? Do you believe we should all have a right to access our health care? We created Facebook events, calendar invites, and we basically marketed as much as we could our message. In addition, we decreased the response effort by using our website, which you can find at hawaiiaba.org. And different state chapters operate this differently, and it depends on who your volunteer organization is, how many people are a part of that organization, the skill sets that the people have who are a part of your organization, and really just how much time is there in a day. So we have created a website. We use webs.com. It's a free platform, but we do pay for an upgraded version that allows us to host videos and links. We find that it's pretty self-explanatory, and that other people who move into those positions have been able to maintain that website. But as far as communicating with our community, we decrease the response effort because they don't have to create a login at the state capitol. And they didn't have to.
5 minutes.
Oh, thank you. And they didn't have to submit the testimony themselves over and over and over again. We wanted to increase the accessibility. So although we did have our written bills and our testimony, we then recorded what that testimony meant because it was in very technical language. We also brought the bling. So we used environmental modifications and stimulus prompts. We used buttons, puzzle piece, bumper stickers, shirts, reusable bags, stickers, and buttons. We also this year created visuals. Everyone's saying that there's capacity issues and that the growth for behavior analysts is stunted in our state. That's inaccurate. Now, we still need many, many, many more behavior analysts than what we have now, but look at this trajectory, which honestly I know would probably be better reflected on our standard acceleration chart. So I'll look into that. I'm still honing in my skills in that area. We also wore same color and we did a sea of blue, programming common visual stimuli so that they could see us and recognize us. Luke was also the face of our campaign and he's standing in front. This year, we're doing a sea of green, but it's still a lot of the same smiling faces. Remember, keep it positive. We created a banner online for $10, and now we can just put it into a bunch of photos and it just fits in my bag. Attend your community events and identify these naturally occurring opportunities to have conversations, whether that's the autism walk or a fundraiser, a town hall, a beach cleanup. Go out there, show your face. In Hawaii, and every state's different, but we have written testimony, permanent products, another way to connect and to look at our data collection. In our most recent hearing, I submitted 259 pieces of testimony from our community in support of HABA's amendments, and as I mentioned, those amendments were adopted. We also have in-person testimony. You need to find out if you can watch any videos or if there are any other recordings, read the other testimony that's published by others, study it, analyze it, be an analyst. And then repetition, repetition, repetition. Same thing when we're doing discrete trial or interspersed or mass trialing or any incidental teaching program. Over and over and over, repeated opportunities allow for repeated feedback, repeated chances and for reinforcement for individuals to contact. I have this image on my website, and it's called "Can You Guess the Year Based on the Color of My Hair?" Only because my hair changes quite frequently, and we've been fighting or advocating for quite some time. To just conclude for you here, I want you to realize that you can be systematic, coordinate your efforts, but again, embed what you know, visual supports, prompts, individualization of programming. It's the same thing we do with our clients and our students. We just have to kind of conceptualize it on a different scale. Personalize. Parents have power. Small consumable bites. We made cookies and attached our messages. In Hawaii with Monsanto here, we have a lot of concern about organic and non-GMO and other health kind of concerns, and so we made sure that that was included in our cookie and in our packaging so that we were sensitive to our culture. This year we had cookies made for Valentine's Day that said HABA or ABA in the DOE. Don't forget your facts though, because cookies are yummy, but they dissipate, and we want to leave our legislators with the information. Fill your hearings if you can, even if people don't want to testify or aren't even sure why they're there. Ask them to wear blue or wear green and to show up. We waived those signs, and that was helpful for us in getting media coverage, which can then just help disseminate our message even further. We made memorable materials and found them in our legislator's office years later on their fridge. And Luke is still at the forefront of what's going on for us because he's not accessing his ABA services during the day, and that's part of what's happening for our discussions in Hawaii. Parents have the power. You need to be persistent, and I think some of the most important things you can do are to stay positive. It's not always hard. In Hawaii, there is a phrase, and it is to live pono. It means to do what's right. For how can you sit down when there's so much that needs to be stood up for? Just my parting words for you. Expect the unexpected. Be ready in a moment's notice. Be ready to talk about ABA anywhere. Be ready to talk about it with anyone in a way that they can understand. But don't forget to pause, to look around, to say and to show thanks, and to realize that you have the power to achieve change, whether you know it or not. Thank you so much for your time. And this is some contact information for me here.